get a bucket and a mop. Oh, yeah, I can handle that. Hey everyone, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator, and on my channel, I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you be successful in a medical coding career. I've been asked to do some more case studies lately, as well as demonstrate how you kind of work through some of the problems that you might see on the CPC exam. Now, because I am a certified instructor through the AAPC and do pay licensing to utilize their materials, I did get permission to take a small amount of cases to use for my YouTube channel so I can demonstrate for you. So let's work through some cases together. Let's start with case number 1. Patient with coronary arteriosclerosis disease sees his cardiologist to discuss a coronary artery bypass graft, a CABG. This will be the patient's first CABG. Which ICD-10-CM code is reported? So let's take a look at these. They all start with I-25. So we could almost flip right to I-25 and just start looking around there. But first, let's take a look at what is the diagnosis that we're going to be looking for. So in here, this patient is having coronary artery disease or coronary arteriosclerosis disease. So what would we start with our key term? We're going to start with disease. So if we start just looking this out, we would look under this disease and then coronary arteriosclerosis. Now, if we are taking the exam and trying to save some time, I would actually flip right to the I-25 category and start eyeballing some of these different codes, because all of these are going to be in like within a page or two of each other if we start looking at them. So let's see where that takes us if we start with disease in our alphabetic index. So if we look under disease arteriosclerotic, it tells us to see also arteriosclerosis, and it has cardiovascular. So sometimes they do include the actual code here anyway, even though it tells you to see see something else. But in this case, it doesn't. So let's go to where it says to see also arteriosclerosis. So let's start there then. So if you look at arteriosclerosis, the first thing it says here is coronary artery, and it gives code I-2510, which is one of the options here. So let's take a look at that I-2510 in our tabular list. And it says here, arteriosclerotic heart disease of native coronary artery without angina pectoris. This didn't say anything in it about angina pectoris. And there are different codes for native arteries versus bypass. And this says it's the patient's first one. So that means they haven't had any bypasses yet, and they have their native artery. So in that case, we're looking at I-2510 for the correct code selection. Now this next question, if you've watched my ICD-10-CM coding guidelines videos, you'll know the answer to this because I've said it quite a few times. According to the ICD-10-CM official guidelines for coding and reporting, Chapter 15, Pregnancy, Childbirth, and the Puerperium, codes have sequencing priority over what codes? And how do we figure out what this is? So this is an interesting question, and it's something that might come up in some of your studies or your exam, because it's asking us basically to understand what the guidelines are, not look up a code, but to understand the guidelines. So here are the options. Chapter 15 codes do not have sequencing priority over other codes. All codes including Z33.1, codes from other chapters, and codes from chapter 1. So here's where we figure that out. They're asking us to understand the guidelines. That's the key here, is they want us to know in the guidelines. So if we don't have this guideline memorized, we need to go to our guidelines and figure it out. So here's our guidelines for Chapter 15, and one of the first things it says here in the general rules for obstetric cases is Chapter 15 codes have sequencing priority over codes from other chapters. So that's what we need to know, that they have sequencing priority over all other chapters. And that's actually something, if you're studying for your CPC, I would probably highlight that so that you remember it. Next, provide the correct ICD-10-CM code for acute RSV bronchiolitis. So we're going to start with this term here and look that up in our alphabetic index. If we go to our code for bronchiolitis, here's our non-essential modifier, acute, and then we have the code for RSV is down here, J21.0, so I'm already thinking that's it. Let's just verify in the tabular. All right, and here it is, J210 acute bronchiolitis due to RSV. There's no additional character extensions. We're not coding anything else, so we don't really need to pay too much attention to this excludes code. And there's nothing else saying we also have to code additionally for anything else. So that looks like it's the right one. We're going to go with J21.0, which is option C. Now, next question, what CPT and ICD-10-CM codes are reported for hemicolectomy performed on a patient with colon cancer? So cancer, I often think of our C codes. Those are, C for cancer, or a lot of the cancer codes. But sometimes they are D codes, but I'm probably right away going to start swaying more towards the C18-9 and the C19 codes versus the D codes. Let's actually start with the CPT code here, because these are actually all different CPT codes. So if we can eliminate what the CPT code version is, we might not even need to pay attention then to the ICD-10-CM if we can get the right CPT. So we're looking for a hemicolectomy performed on a patient with colon cancer. So if you're someone who likes to look this up first in the alphabetic index here, you can start with colectomy. So here's our code for colectomy, and then we're going to go for partial, because hemi only means half, and that would mean then a partial colectomy, not a total colectomy. So let's take a look at this question again. What CPT and ICD-10-CM codes are reported for hemicolectomy performed on a patient with colon cancer? So this doesn't really tell us that it is a laparoscopic with colostomy, anything like that. So I'm right away going to kind of sway maybe towards just this default code 44140. But let's take a look at that code in particular, 44140. So here it says colectomy partial with anastomosis. Now this doesn't say anything about an anastomosis, but assumedly they're going to do some kind of anastomosis. The other options here, let's just kind of take a look at them. 44155. See, 44155 is colectomy total abdominal. That's not anything that we're doing. So that's what we're going to cross that out. 44210. 44210 total again, so that's absolutely out the window because we didn't do a total, we did partial. And 44213, I bet that one is another laparoscopic surgery mobilization of the splenic flexure. This is not anything with partial. So partial colectomy is part of it, but we didn't do all this other stuff. And this is an add-on code. Look at this. Right away, we can see this. This is an add-on code. This can't be billed without an additional code. It has to be used in conjunction with one of these other codes. And if we can't just use an add-on code alone. So that one is out of the window right away. So definitely A for this case. So we didn't even have to look up the ICD-10-CM codes. We just eliminated it just by going on to the CPT. Now, if you were to look up C18.9, it would tell you that that is, in fact, the code for colon cancer. You could have probably done this in reverse, maybe, and just looked up C18.9 and saw that that was the code for colon cancer and eliminated out the rest of them. So whichever way is, works for you. All right, so our fifth and final question. A patient is admitted for simple primary examination of the GI system to rule out GI cancer. An EGD is performed, which includes examination of the esophagus, stomach, and portions of the small intestine. During the examination, a stricture of the esophagus is identified and subsequently dilated via balloon dilation, 20 millimeters. What CPT code and ICD-10 codes are reported? Now, what do we know about rule-out diagnoses? We can't use them in professional coding, so we're not going to even look at ruling out GI cancer. And this code here is a C code, which is probably a cancer code. So right away, I'm thinking, probably not going to be A. So let's check out some of these codes and see, because they're around the same area, we can look between this 4.8 versus the 4.9 and determine if there's some sort of difference there. So here's 43248, but it's not the full code. So what is the full code there? Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. So EGD flexible transoral with insertion of guide wire followed by passage of dilator through esophagus over wires. And then this one's with transendoscopic balloon dilation of the esophagus less than 30 millimeters. So this was 20 millimeters. So at least that's kind of looking a little bit more comparable. So this here says they examined the esophagus. There's a stricture of the esophagus identified and dilated via balloon, 20 millimeters. So I'm really leaning towards this code right away. This 249 code. I really don't think it's this 48 code, because I'm not seeing anything here about guide wires. And this code here, the 43235, is just for the EGD flexible transoral diagnostic, including collection of specimen, but it doesn't say anything about the balloon dilation. So again, I don't think it's this one. I'm thinking we're going to go with C. So actually, if you look in the CPT book in the alphabetic index under EGD flexible transoral dilation, it'll tell you to look up 43233 or 43249. So that is this code here, the 43249. And then this code here, the K22.2, is for the stricture of the esophagus. So if you go into your alphabetic index and start with stricture and then go to esophagus, it'll refer you to K22.2. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you give it a big thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. And you're going to want to hit that notification bell, because you can get alerts then whenever I post new episodes, just like this one. I post great materials twice a week, every single week. I will see you in the next video. And until then, just keep on coding on.